Behind me is a 1997 Rover Mini, a Mini Cooper, the last Mini Cooper that the purists, the cult following that loves these cars would accept before they swore off all other Minis that came after it. Now, you guys have seen me drive incredibly quick Minis before. Our friend Lorenzo at RPM Power builds 400, 500, 600 wheel horsepower Mini Coopers. And I want to find out if what he's trying to squeeze out of those later cars, if that excitement, if that raw feel is actually just what this car provides in this form right behind me. So our friend Jared has been kind enough to toss me the keys for the day. Let's go for a drive. Here we are, Rover Mini, or just Mini Cooper, as simple as it gets, really. As you guys know, just after this car ceased production in the year 2000, yes, this is a 97, you would never guess it by just looking at it, but the ceased production in 2000, and then BMW took over. Not a year later, the new Mini Cooper was introduced. This is a completely different experience, completely different ownership than what the new Minis are. That, by the way, is a toll reader. Japanese toll reader. This is a Japanese import. That's why I'm on the right side. So yeah, we've got the Japanese road flare. We've got a couple Japanese goodies in here. This one, surprisingly enough, does not smell like Japanese cigarettes, which I can appreciate. The original Mini was produced for 41 years between 1959 and 2000. Well over 5 million of them were made. The most produced British car ever, which is kind of surprising because now you don't really see them on the road. And that is largely due to the fact that I believe in the early 70s, these were banned from being sold in the United States for safety concerns. Mini could not or did not want to keep up with the regulatory measures that would have required for this to pass safety regulations in the US. They were sold up until 1980 in Canada, however. I guess we're a little bit more chill about people taking their own safety into their own hands. 1.275 liter 4-cylinder under the hood. They call it a 1.3. That's okay with me. Front wheel drive, of course. Rated at 68 horsepower from the factory. Fuel injected, which is nuts. Mini's got fuel injection in 1994, and it wasn't until later, I think a year prior to this one I'm driving right now, they got multi-point fuel injection. So yeah, really, really crazy, wild stuff. I mean, we take all of this for granted now, but BMW did own Mini at the time that this was made, and they were just trying to basically squeeze the last little bit out of it. It's really funny driving this thing, though. First off, visibility you'd think would be awesome because there's nothing to it. It's a tin can, it's not safe. The crumple zone is me. It feels like I'm in a beer can. There's like a millimeter of space between me and the car next to me, but I have no visibility out of the front windshield when I'm close to something because I'm like, the roof is right above me. So to look up, I can't see traffic lights. You get to a traffic light, you cannot see when it turns green. You have to either peer down or do something like that. And then when you're on a back road like this, the rear view mirror is in the way of me seeing the apex if I'm taking a left-handed corner. No power steering, as you'd expect, and a 4-speed manual, not a 5-speed manual. It has an airbag. That's kind of funny. Yeah, throwing an airbag in this Mini, that's like, you know the headphones they give you for free on an airplane? That's what that is. Like, you know they're not actually going to work, but it's free. You take it anyways. It's for optics. It's only for a short amount of time. If you're driving a Mini, safety is not your primary concern. Yeah, steering's not actually too bad, even at low speeds with no power steering. Whew. Clutch is nice. Easy to shift. The shifter is loose and very intentional. Because it's only a 4-speed, it's like it was trying to make up for the additional space left over from a 5 or a 6-speed, right? So to get from second to third is like shifting from second to fifth in any other car. You have to be very intentional. You're not quickly shifting this car. This does not, contrary to popular belief in pop culture, this does not reward quick, darty movements, at least when it comes to shifting inputs, clutch, brakes. Like, my knee is on the steering column. It's taking in a lot of the damping from the road that the steering column should probably not be taking in to begin with, but I'm soaking a lot of that up. But my right knee has a ton of air on the right side, and the shifter, out of all the inputs, has the most room. It's actually very easy to drive. It's very forgiving once you get the kind of rhythm and the finesse of driving it. All right, let's give it some gas. It is cold out today. I'm not going to be going too crazy. Steering's a little dead on center. Jared has to replace this steering rack. It's got something wrong going on with it, but that's some good power. Waiting. I feel bad revving the thing out. I've got to say though, it feels like a modern engine. It feels good. There's no hiccups. There's no, like, it's not complaining that I'm revving too much, that I'm shifting too much. Great throttle response. You can heel toe. The pedals are about as big as my thumb, but you can heel toe. Just like when I drove the Lotus Emira, this is a vehicle where you have to very accurately assess, there we go, which kind of shoes you're going to wear in the morning. You cannot just wear what you're going to wear when you get there. It's like riding a motorcycle. You have to choose your shoes accordingly. I mean, my knees are hitting the steering column. My feet are hitting each other when I'm shifting and braking. But pedal feel is good. Brakes are really firm. This one actually has discs. It has everything that you need. It's got your temp. It's got a blower here. This even has an aftermarket head unit and a modern-ish looking tack speedo. The speedo goes up to 180 kilometers an hour, which is hilarious. The same as any other Japanese car. Like a twin-turbo Supra you import from Japan also goes up to 180 kilometers an hour, but you could wrap that no problem. This, no chance. So much vibration. And I know I could reach out if the firewall wasn't here and touch the engine. So that all, like, mentally, logically makes sense to me. However, as a thing on the road, which I'm expected to blend into society with, it makes zero sense in modern context. This feels so far removed. I would argue, honestly, nah, maybe not quite. I was gonna say as far removed as like an original Lotus Elise or Exige feels like on the road now, just in how raw it is and how uncomfortable it is to daily drive. This is way more, infinitely more daily drivable than an early Lotus Exige. I will say though, the Lotus and Mini crowds, the classic Mini crowd, are the same people. They're both extremists. What do I mean by that? They're both after the same thing. When I drove the Lotus Emira recently, I got a ton of comments from Lotus owners and purists being like, that's not a real Lotus, it's heavy, it's a GT car. Yeah, compared to the older ones, it's comfortable. Compared to everything else on the road, it is not a GT car. I promise you that. It is a sports car, hardcore sports car through and through. And many people are pretty much the same as Lotus people. I figure if you give them what they say they want, which is just less of everything, less weight, less barriers between you and the engine, they would be happy. But where does that lead you? That leads you to a go-kart. And I'm sure if I were to ask Lotus or Mini drivers, do you want to go-kart? They would probably say, no. I could be wrong, but 6,000 RPM red line. And third gear will take you as fast as you want to go in this car. It is really a 2-gear car. You're second and third. And then on the freeway, 100 kilometers an hour, we're turning 3,500 RPM. That's not too bad. So where does this leave this experience in comparison to Lorenzo's highly refined and powerful 400 plus horsepower modern Minis? Well, first off, the stakes are much higher. The modern boost by gear, power steering, and insulation mean that speedometer needs to read quite a bit higher to extract the same laugh track. What he's trying to capture just reminds me of what these old school Mini drivers and what these cars really give you, which is an authentic, kind of in certain scenarios, a frightening driving experience, even when you're not going quickly. The difference is the modern Minis, they have an on-off, like they have an off switch. This never really has an off switch. In a lot of Lorenzo's cars, you can forget if you're just cruising that you're driving something that full throttle could toss you off the road with the amount of torque steer, just raw power it has. You know, you really have to rein it in. This you have to rein it in just a different way, although those feelings when you're pushing the car are largely the same. Yeah, I cannot see. Apex, no. Rear view mirror, I gotta duck down. Oh, it's so light on its feet though. Full wheel spin coming out of that corner. Now I'm getting a hang of it. Now I've learned the car a little bit. The car's become my friend finally. It gives you everything on the street, which a lot of modern sports cars with the added weight, complexity, electronics, nannies have lost. So Mini, refreshing, and that's why they're worth so much. This is not a cheap car in today's day and age when you just look at the raw specs. But oh, is it worth it? Yes. Woo!
I'm Jared. I run Galma Racing, and this is my 1997 Rover Mini. So this one's got the updated interior, a little bit more creature comfort. It's got AC, and it's got fuel injection, and this one's got an ECU and a coil pack, so it runs all the time.
An ECU, wow.
Yeah, yeah, modern tech in an old school Mini.
One thing I did notice actually, the turn signals. This is the first time I've driven a right-hand drive car with turn signals on the left side.
Yeah, it messes me up all the time because I'll go from my daily driver to this to the Supra, and they're all on different sides, and I always get mixed. Oh, which one's that? Oh, it's right, it's this side.
In every other Japanese import that's built by a Japanese manufacturer, the turn signals are on this side, but in the Mini, it's on that side. Why do you like Minis?
They're small. They're small and dinky. They're just fun. I think Jeremy Clarkson said this. You can't be a real car person until you've owned one of these or at least experience it. They're just so much different and so much more fun. It's like just a go-kart on the road.
What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be in repairing this if something does come up?
Well, luckily for me, I got little tiny hands, but they make it relatively easy to service. Like you take off the airbox, you can get most of the way in the back there. To do any servicing on the front, you just take the grill out and it is basically completely open.
Oh yeah.
So it's not too bad. There are some weird things like steering rack. I have to do a steering rack in this thing. You got to drop the motor. That was not a good day to find that out.
No. This is another huge benefit of having a car this small, you guys. If you have your own shop, caught on the road, dead, yeah, you just move your car yourself.
See, I usually walk around or drive this thing with like a dog leash, because if it does break down, I just walk it home.
Just walk it home, he says. What makes this so different in terms of suspension? I've heard of the hockey puck style or the cone.
So
the
I call them hockey pucks.
Okay,
So
that's where I heard it from.
So right up in here, usually is like just basically a rubber cone that sits in there, and that's your suspension. The newer ones do have like a shock absorber, but when this one came from Japan, somebody had already put like a high-low kit in it so you can lower it, but it also came with the coil spring, which is really nice. But it's like a push rod style. Drum brakes on the back, discs on the front that are probably about 8 inches maybe.
Yeah.
You can unbolt the subframe, so the whole subframe and engine can come down, which is what I'm gonna have to do when I take out the steering rack. Steering rack's all the way up in here. So like the biggest problem with these is that, so this side, you got quite a bit of play in that, and that's a real common issue with these apparently.
Yeah. Is this factory here?
I think
it
it might have been like a factory option per se. With the newer minis, but more than likely it's aftermarket. So on my last Mini, I couldn't get the whole CV hub out through that hole, but it looks like these ones are actually bigger.
Big enough.
Because with my last one, you actually had to take this all apart and then reassemble it in here and then put it into the transmission.
That's insane.
Which is ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
But it works.
The original Mini was one of the first front-wheel drive people carriers. It was a simple car just made to get people around, much like the Beetle was after the war. And it's this simplicity of engineering that's created a stark contrast against a numb palette of new cars. It's that same contrast Japanese K cars have today on American roads. Our minds can understand the modern turbocharging, fuel injection, and ABS, but simply can't accept their place in society today. They're a little bit rebellious, and they're beyond silly. Thanks for watching.